Admiral Ta stood on the command deck of the Imperial flagship Dominion *, his tall frame casting a long shadow across the polished floor. The massive view screen before him displayed the blue and green planet known to its inhabitants as Earth. The sight should have filled him with the usual sense of conquest, but something about this world made his scales prickle with unease. "Magnify Sector 4, he ordered, his voice carrying the authority of 300 cycles of Imperial service. The image shifted, revealing sprawling cities alongside vast oceans. Primitive flying machines crossed the skies while ground vehicles moved in organized patterns, nothing particularly impressive for a species that had only recently discovered atomic energy. Science Officer June approached with a data tablet, her movements precise and efficient. "The assessment is complete, Admiral. Their most advanced weapons rely on chemical propellants and crude nuclear devices. Their space capabilities are limited to their own moon and unmanned probes to neighboring planets." Ta nodded, satisfied by the confirmation of Imperial intelligence. "Threat assessment. Minimal," Joan replied, scrolling through her findings. "They possess no unified planetary government, instead operating under nearly 200 separate political entities. Their military forces are divided and technologically inferior by approximately 15 standard development cycles." The Admiral allowed himself a small smile. These conquests were becoming routine. Find a developing world, demonstrate overwhelming power, establish resource extraction operations, and move on. The Emperor's expansion policies were ambitious but effective. Commander Han, the fleet's intelligence specialist, cleared his throat from his station nearby. "Admiral, with respect, I've been studying their historical records, and I believe caution is warranted." Tai raised an eyebrow ridge. Han was not known for unnecessary concerns. "Explain." Han projected a series of images onto a secondary screen, brutal conflicts spanning centuries of human development. "These beings have an unusual relationship with warfare. They've spent much of their recorded history fighting each other with remarkable innovation and adaptability. They advance their military technology faster during conflicts than many species do during peaceful development. Many primitive species have violent histories," Ta dismissed. "It's why the Empire's guiding hand is necessary." "Yes, sir, but humans seem different. They've developed nuclear weapons and chosen not to use them widely, suggesting unusual restraint. They've created international laws of war. They study past conflicts obsessively, and their entertainment." Han displayed scenes from human media, showing fictional wars against alien invaders. "They've been imagining conflicts with beings like us for generations." Tai studied the images with growing irritation. The conquest schedule allowed only 10 cycles for complete pacification of this world. The Emperor wouldn't tolerate delays. What can a species that still fights with metal projectiles possibly do against our gravimetric weapons? Han hesitated. "Their technological inferiority is clear, Admiral. I simply suggest we consider a more diplomatic first approach. The Emperor expects compliance within a standard cycle." Tai replied sharply. "We follow protocol. Prepare the contact team and alert the diplomatic course." "Yes, Admiral," Han said, returning to his station. 2 cycles later, the first official contact proceeded according to Imperial standards. 3 diplomatic vessels descended through Earth's atmosphere in full view of global monitoring systems, landing at a predetermined location in neutral territory, a place humans called Switzerland. Representatives from Earth's most powerful nations gathered in a large conference facility. Ta watched the proceedings remotely from the Dominion *, Ambassador Kyo leading the Imperial delegation. The humans appeared surprisingly calm-facing beings from another world. Their leaders asked intelligent questions about the Empire, its history, and its intentions. Ambassador Kyo delivered the standard integration speech, emphasizing the benefits of joining the Emperor's domain. "Your world will receive technological advancements, protection from cosmic threats, and membership in the greatest civilization in the known galaxy," Kyo stated proudly. In exchange, we require resource allocation rights, technological submission protocols, and governance integration. The human translators worked quickly, and the Earth representatives conferred among themselves. An older human female with short gray hair addressed the imperial delegation. While we appreciate your offer of friendship, the terms you propose amount to colonization. Earth is not interested in surrendering its sovereignty or resources to an outside power, regardless of technological advantages. Kaio's expression remained neutral, but Tai could see the ambassador's tail twitching in annoyance, a sign of impatience. Perhaps I haven't made the alternative clear, Kaio replied. Refusing imperial integration is not an option available to developing worlds. The emperors will extend to all habitable planets in this sector. A different human, a tall male with dark skin, leaned forward. Ambassador, human history is filled with entities who believe their technological or military advantages gave them the right to control others. None succeeded permanently. We strongly advise you to reconsider your approach. Tai watched with growing frustration as the humans continued to resist what should have been a straightforward process. When the session ended with no agreement, he ordered Ambassador Kyo back to the fleet. They're more stubborn than anticipated, Kaio reported upon return. They speak as if they have a choice in the matter. Then we proceed to Phase 2, Tai decided. Prepare a demonstration of imperial power. Select 3 of their military installations. Nothing near population centers yet. We'll show them what resistance means. Communications Officer Min approached, her expression concerned. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from their United Coalition of Nations. They're requesting direct communication with you. Ta straightened his ceremonial collar. On screen. The view screen displayed a group of humans seated at a long table. Their spokesperson, a middle-aged male with graying hair at his temples, addressed the camera directly. Admiral Ta, I am Secretary General Park of the United Nations. Following our meeting with your representatives, Earth's nations have convened an emergency session to address your demands. We wish to be absolutely clear. While we are open to peaceful exchange and mutual cooperation, we will not accept terms that reduce us to a subject world. Tai felt his patience wearing thin. Secretary General, perhaps you misunderstand your position. The Empire has incorporated thousands of worlds into its domain. Some came willingly, others required persuasion. The outcome remains the same. With respect, Admiral, Park continued evenly. Humans have faced conquerors throughout our history. We understand the pattern you are following. Before you take your next step, I urge you to examine our historical records more carefully. We are a species forged in conflict. We do not wish to fight you, but we will defend ourselves by any means necessary. Commander Han shifted uncomfortably at his station. Tai ignored him. Your defiance is noted. Secretary General, the Empire will proceed as planned. You have 1 planetary rotation to reconsider your position. The transmission ended, and Todd turned to his command staff. Prepare targeting solutions for the demonstration. We'll show these humans what real power looks like. As the crew moved to execute his orders, Commander Han approached once more. Admiral, I've completed further analysis of human conflict patterns. Their adaptation rate during warfare is concerning. Enough, Commander. Todd cut him off. Your concerns are noted. The operation continues as planned. The following day, Tay received the humans' final response. The transmission from Earth's United Coalition was brief. Reconsider your demands. We don't wish to fight, but we will defend ourselves. Tay's response was equally brief. Submit or face pacification. As he ended the transmission, Tai felt an unexpected chill despite the ship's regulated temperature. He dismissed it as meaningless. After all, what could a species that had barely reached its own moon possibly do against the might of the Galactic Empire? He would soon find out. The first strikes against Earth were planned to be surgical and overwhelming. Admiral Ta selected 3 major military installations across different continents. The targets were an air base in North America, a naval port in Asia, and a missile facility in Europe. The attacks would demonstrate Imperial power while minimizing civilian casualties, standard procedure for worlds that required persuasion rather than immediate occupation. Deployment in 5 minutes, announced the tactical officer as 20 Imperial cruisers broke formation from the main fleet. Each vessel carried enough firepower to level a small city. From his command chair on the Dominion *, Ta watched the operation with professional detachment. Begin the broadcast to all Earth communication channels. Across the planet, human screens and communication devices flickered to display Ta's stern face. People of Earth, this is Admiral Ta of the Galactic Imperial Fleet. Your leaders have unwisely rejected our generous offer of integration. The demonstration you are about to witness represents a fraction of our military capability. Further resistance will only increase suffering. We await your surrender. The cruisers entered Earth's atmosphere in perfect formation, their hulls glowing red-hot from the entry friction. Earth's primitive aircraft scrambled to intercept them, but the cruisers' velocity made them impossible to track effectively. Attack squadrons in position, reported Commander Wei from the tactical station. Ta nodded. Commence demonstration. The lead cruisers released their first volley of energy weapons against the North American target. Beams of concentrated particles sliced through concrete bunkers and melted steel reinforcements. Secondary explosions erupted as ammunition stores detonated. The Imperial sensors showed the expected devastation. North American target neutralized, Wei announced with satisfaction. But the reports from the other targets came in differently. Sir, European squadron reports unexpected resistance. Lieutenant Sung called out, his voice tense. Human forces launched some type of experimental weapon. 2 cruisers have sustained shield damage. Ta frowned. Impossible. Their weapons shouldn't penetrate our defensive fields. The tactical display updated, showing unusual energy signatures around the European target. The humans had apparently prepared specialized defenses despite having no previous contact with Imperial technology. Asian target squadron reporting similar resistance. Sung continued. They've lost contact with Cruiser 7. A murmur of surprise ran through the command deck. Lost contact could mean many things, but none of them were good. Show me, Tai ordered. The main screen shifted to a live feed from one of the cruisers over the Asian naval base. The Imperial ships were facing a barrage of missiles that seemed to be tracking their movements with unexpected precision. More concerning, some of the missiles were emitting an energy signature that interfered with Imperial targeting systems. How did they develop countermeasures so quickly? Science Officer Jun wondered aloud, studying the readings. As they watched, one of the human missiles struck an Imperial cruiser's engine section. Instead of being stopped by the shields, it passed through and detonated against the hull. Shield failure on Cruiser 4, Wei reported. They've adapted their weapons to match our shield frequency. Tad rose from his chair, his composure slipping. That's not possible. They couldn't have analyzed our technology that quickly. More alerts sounded across the command deck. The European squadron was now reporting 3 cruisers disabled, and the North American forces had regrouped to launch a counterattack. Sir, we've lost contact with the 3rd Fleet, Lieutenant Sung reported, his voice trained. Tai stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The 3rd Fleet consisted of 5 cruisers tasked with subduing the European installation. All 5 signals had gone dark. Launch recovery teams immediately, he ordered. No Imperial technology can fall into human hands. But the warning came too late. Intelligence Officer Han rushed to the command platform, his scales pale with alarm. Admiral, preliminary reports indicate Cruiser 2 made an emergency landing intact. Human forces surrounded the crash site before our recovery teams could arrive. The implications were severe. An intact Imperial vessel would give humans access to technology centuries beyond their development level. How can they learn our technology so quickly? Ta demanded of no one in particular. Jun approached with a data tablet. Sir, I've been analyzing human scientific development patterns. They show unusual spikes during conflict periods. They appear to innovate faster when threatened. The tactical situation deteriorated over the next several hours. The demonstration attack, meant to last less than a day, stretched into a full planetary rotation, with Imperial forces unable to achieve their objectives. 3 more cruisers were lost, and the human resistance was growing more effective by the hour. Ta was forced to recall the remaining attack forces. The demonstration had failed. Worse, it had revealed weaknesses in Imperial military technology that no species had exploited before. In the following days, Ta ordered a change in strategy. If surgical strikes wouldn't work, the Empire would deploy ground forces to secure key locations. Troop carriers descended to establish forward operating bases in remote areas, away from major human military concentrations. The plan seemed sound initially. Imperial soldiers established perimeters and began constructing more permanent facilities. Advanced sensor arrays were deployed to track human military movements. Then the guerrilla attacks began. Another base has gone dark, Commander Wei reported one morning, 6 days after the ground deployment. Base 7 in the region humans call Siberia. All communication ceased after reporting small arms fire at the perimeter. Small arms shouldn't threaten an Imperial base, Ta said with growing frustration. What aren't we seeing? The answer came when drone footage recovered from Base 7 was analyzed. Human fighters had used the dense forest cover to approach the base undetected. They employed simple projectile weapons, but with surprising effectiveness, targeting sensor arrays, communication equipment, and power generators with precision. Most concerning, some humans were using what appeared to be modified Imperial weapons. They've already reversed engineered our technology, Jun confirmed after studying the footage. The energy signature matches our standard infantry weapons, but the housing is clearly human manufactured. Within weeks, reports flooded in of guerrilla attacks across all landing zones. Human forces would strike, vanish, then reappear elsewhere. They never engaged in direct confrontations where Imperial technological superiority would prevail. Instead, they targeted vulnerabilities, captured equipment, and disappeared before reinforcements arrived. They're not fighting by any civilized doctrine, Jun noted, reviewing the casualties. Imperial forces had lost more personnel in 3 weeks than in the last 5 planetary pacifications combined. Ta called an emergency meeting of his senior staff. The situation had become untenable. Our standard protocols aren't working, he admitted as his officers gathered in the secure briefing room. These humans fight differently than other species we've encountered. Commander Han nodded grimly. I warned that their history suggested unusual adaptability. They're fighting an asymmetric war, avoiding our strengths and exploiting our weaknesses. It's a strategy they've refined through centuries of internal conflicts. And their technological adaptation rate is unprecedented, added Jun. They've already incorporated elements of our shield technology into their defensive systems. Their learning curve is nearly vertical. Lieutenant Sung brought more troubling news. Sir, we've confirmed the humans have established a unified command structure. Former enemy nations are now coordinating their attacks against us. They're sharing technology, intelligence, and resources. Tai stared out the viewport at the blue planet below. What should have been a routine operation had become the most challenging conflict of his career. The Emperor would demand answers and results. Prepare a full report for Imperial High Command, he ordered finally. Request reinforcements and authorization for escalated measures. If the humans want war, we will show them what real war looks like. As the officers dispersed, Commander Han lingered behind. Admiral, perhaps we should consider diplomatic options again. The humans have proven more formidable than anticipated. Tay's expression hardened. The Empire does not negotiate from a position of weakness, Commander. We will crush this resistance, as we have done countless times before. But as he spoke, a notification appeared on his personal tablet. Another Imperial base had gone dark. Another defeat at the hands of beings who, by all Imperial standards, should have been easily subdued. For the first time in his long career, Admiral Ta felt something unfamiliar. Doubt. 6 months had passed since the first Imperial ships descended upon Earth. What was planned as a quick demonstration of power had become a costly, protracted conflict. The Imperial forces had retreated to orbital positions, maintaining a blockade while rebuilding their strength. 3 additional battle groups had arrived from the core systems, bringing the Imperial presence to over 100 warships. Admiral Ta stood before the strategic display in his private quarters, studying the deployment of his forces. Dark circles had formed under his eyes from lack of sleep. The campaign against Earth had become a personal failure that threatened his career and reputation. "The reinforcements are in position, Admiral," Commander Wei reported as he entered after a respectful knock. "Our orbital defense grid is now at full capacity." Ta nodded. The humans had proven surprisingly resilient in ground combat, but they remained confined to their planet. Their primitive spacecraft couldn't reach beyond their moon, and their weapons couldn't target ships in high orbit. The new strategy was simple: maintain the blockade, prevent Earth from receiving outside help, and prepare for a full-scale invasion. "Have our research teams made progress understanding their adaptation rate?" Ta asked. Wei handed him a data tablet. Science Officer Jun's latest report confirms that humans have remarkable cognitive flexibility. They've already incorporated some of our technology into their defense systems. However, they remain limited by their manufacturing capabilities and resource restrictions. "And the captured vessels? We've confirmed 3 scout ships and 1 cruiser lost intact. We must assume the humans are studying them." Ta frowned. Even with captured Imperial technology, humans shouldn't be able to understand it, let alone replicate it. The technical gap was too vast. The Empire had faced many species that captured their technology, but none had been able to utilize it effectively without decades of study. "At least they remain trapped on their world," Ta said, more to reassure himself than Wei. "Prepare the next phase of psychological operations. I want their population to understand the futility of resistance." Wei left to carry out his orders, leaving Ta alone with his thoughts. The Emperor was growing impatient. 2 planned conquests had been delayed to provide resources for the Earth campaign. If Tai couldn't deliver results soon, he would be replaced, a fate that typically included execution for high-ranking failures. Across the void of space, in the outer reaches of the Sol system, Imperial Outpost Nexus 7 maintained its vigilant watch. The small station served as an early warning system, positioned to detect any approach from neighboring star systems. Officer Key sat at the sensor console, fighting boredom during his standard 12-hour shift. The alarm blared suddenly, jolting Key fully alert. The sensor display showed an anomalous energy signature approaching from the direction of Earth's outer planets. "Station commander to the monitoring deck," Key called over the communication system. "Unidentified energy signature detected." Station Commander Day arrived moments later, his uniform slightly disheveled from being woken from rest cycle. "Report," he demanded, leaning over the console. "Unknown signature approaching at high velocity," Key explained. "The pattern doesn't match any known Imperial vessel. A traitor from one of the neutral systems, perhaps." Key shook his head. "No, sir. The approach vector suggests it came from the direction of Earth, but..." He hesitated, checking his readings again. "Sir, it's moving at faster than light speeds." "Impossible," muttered Officer K. "They couldn't have." The energy signature on the screen was unmistakable. Whatever was approaching was using a form of faster-than-light travel. The implications were staggering. Humans had been a pre-FTL civilization less than a year ago. No species in recorded Imperial history had developed interstellar travel so quickly. "Send an emergency alert to the fleet," Commander Day ordered. "Activate defensive systems and prepare for possible hostile contact." Before Key could complete the transmission, more signatures appeared on the sensor display. Dozens of smaller craft were now accompanying the larger vessel. "Multiple contacts," Key reported. "The primary vessel is decelerating. Configuration unknown, but, sir, I'm detecting Imperial energy signatures mixed with unknown technology. The main view screen activated to show the approaching vessels. The larger ship was unlike anything in the Imperial database, a hybrid design that combines sleek human aerospace principles with Imperial propulsion technology. It was flanked by smaller craft that appeared to be modified human fighter jets, now somehow capable of space travel. "Open communication channels," Dad ordered, his voice tight with tension. The screen flickered, and a human face appeared. The male wore what appeared to be a modified version of their military uniform. "Imperial Outpost Nexus 7, the human said calmly. "This is Captain Jin of the Earth Defense Fleet. Your station is now surrounded. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded." Day stood straighter, his training overcoming his shock. "This station is under the protection of the Galactic Empire. Any hostile action will be met with." The transmission cut off as the first weapons fire struck the outpost. The hybrid human vessel had launched some form of energy weapon that bypassed the station's shields completely. "How did they counter our shields?" Key gasped as the station shuddered around them. The answer became clear in the following hours as the human forces overwhelmed the outpost. Their weapons and tactics showed intimate knowledge of Imperial technology, knowledge that could only have come from extensive study of captured vessels. The human vessel, a hybrid of Earth and Imperial technology, led a swarm of fighters that overwhelmed the outpost in hours. The Imperial defenders fought valiantly, but were unprepared for an enemy that understood their weaknesses so thoroughly. The distress signal from Nexus 7 reached the main fleet 8 hours later. By then, the outpost had fallen, and the human vessels had disappeared back into FTL travel. Admiral Ta received the news with stunned disbelief. He immediately ordered a battle group to investigate, but they found only debris and a missing data core. The humans had taken the station's central computer, along with all its strategic information about Imperial deployments throughout the sector. "How is this possible?" Ta demanded during the emergency council meeting that followed. Their technological development should have taken decades, not months. Science Officer June displayed her analysis on the briefing room screen. The captured vessels provided them with templates. Instead of trying to understand every aspect of our technology, they appear to have focused on specific components they could adapt to their existing systems. It's an approach no other species has attempted before, and now they can strike beyond their own system. Commander Wei added grimly, "We've lost the containment advantage." Within days, reports arrived of similar attacks on Imperial outposts in neighboring star systems. Human hybrid vessels appeared without warning, struck with devastating precision, and disappeared before Imperial reinforcements could respond. They targeted communication arrays, sensor networks, and supply depots, the infrastructure that supported the Empire's military operations. Back at Imperial Command, Ta faced the Emperor's wrath via hologram. The massive projection of the Emperor's scaled form towered over the officers assembled in the command deck. "You assured me this primitive world would be pacified within a standard cycle," the Emperor hissed, his tail lashing in fury. "Now I learn they have developed interstellar capabilities and are attacking Imperial territories." Ta knelt before the projection, keeping his head lowered in submission. "Your Eminence, these humans are unlike any species we have encountered. Their adaptation rate defies all previous models. These humans adapt too quickly," Tai explained, daring to raise his eyes. "They've unified their entire planet against us. Former enemies now work together, sharing resources and knowledge." "Excuses," the Emperor roared. "The Empire does not accept failure, Admiral. You will end this resistance immediately." "Yes, Your Eminence. I request additional resources, To. You have 3 battle fleets at your disposal already." The Emperor cut him off. "Crush them," came the Emperor's order. "Use whatever force necessary. Demonstrate the consequences of defying the Empire." The hologram vanished, leaving Tai kneeling on the hard floor. He rose slowly, aware of his officers watching him. "You heard the Emperor," he said, his voice steady despite his inner turmoil. Prepare for full planetary assault. No more measured responses. But across 3 star systems, more Imperial bases fell to surprise human attacks. The Empire's carefully constructed network of outposts, designed to monitor and control vast regions of space, was being systematically dismantled by a species that, by all Imperial standards, should still be struggling to understand basic space travel. As Tai prepared his fleets for what he hoped would be the decisive battle, he couldn't shake a growing realization. In all his centuries of service, he had never faced an enemy like humanity. And for the first time, he allowed himself to consider a possibility that would have been unthinkable 6 months earlier. The Empire might lose this war. Admiral Ta couldn't sleep. The soft blue light of his private terminal illuminated his quarters as he pored over historical archives. For the 3rd straight night, he immersed himself in humanity's violent past. What had begun as opposition research had become an obsession. Wars. Endless wars. From primitive tribes with stone weapons to global conflicts with mechanized armies. Humans had spent their entire recorded history fighting, mostly against each other, but occasionally united against common threats. Computer, display the analysis of human conflict adaptation rates again, he murmured. The screen shifted to show a graph comparing how quickly different species developed new tactics and technologies during wartime. Humans were outliers, their line climbing at an angle that defied conventional models. Tai rubbed his tired eyes. 9 months into what should have been a simple pacification, the Empire faced a crisis unprecedented in its 5,000-year history. A pre-FTL civilization had not only resisted Imperial forces, but had taken the fight to Imperial territory. His door chimed softly. "Enter," Ta called, not looking away from the screen. Science Officer June stepped inside, carrying a data tablet. Her usual crisp appearance had given way to signs of exhaustion that matched Ta's own. "You requested the analysis of their latest vessels, Admiral." Ta nodded, gesturing for her to continue. "The human ships we encountered at Proxima Centauri show another leap in development," June explained, displaying technical schematics. "They've improved the efficiency of the hybrid drives by nearly 40%. Their weapon systems now incorporate gravitonic principles we believed were beyond their comprehension." "How?" Tai asked, though he was beginning to understand the answer. "They're not trying to understand our technology in the way we expected," Jun said. "They're treating captured systems like components they can modify and recombine without fully grasping the underlying principles. It's unorthodox but remarkably effective. Like children who can't read the manual but figure out how to make the toy work anyway," Tom mused. "An apt analogy, sir, but there's something else." Jun hesitated. "The captured vessels show modifications we wouldn't have considered. They're not just copying our technology, they're improving it in unexpected ways." Tai turned back to his screen, displaying scenes from Earth's most devastating conflicts. "That's their pattern. Look here." He pointed to footage of an ancient battle where primitive warriors crossed a frozen body of water to surprise their enemies. They've always found unconventional solutions when facing superior forces. The following morning, Tai called his inner circle to a secure briefing room. Commander Wei, Lieutenant Sung, Intelligence Officer Han, and Science Officer Jun gathered around the table, their faces showing varying degrees of concern. "What I'm about to say doesn't leave this room," Ta began, his voice low. "The official reports to Imperial High Command will continue to project confidence, but among ourselves, we need to be honest about our situation." He activated the room's display, showing the current state of the conflict. Red markers indicated Imperial losses across 3 star systems. Yellow showed contested areas. The blue of secure Imperial territory had shrunk considerably. "We've made a terrible miscalculation," he told his inner circle. "Humans don't fight like us. They never surrender when conventional logic says they should. The Empire has faced stubborn resistance before," Commander Wei noted. "The Draconis Rebellion lasted 20 cycles." "This is different," Tai replied. The Draconians fought for independence, but followed predictable military doctrine. Humans fight asymmetrically. They avoid our strengths, target our weaknesses, and adapt faster than we can respond. Our technological advantage is still significant, Lieutenant Sung pointed out. But shrinking daily, Jum countered. Their latest ships incorporate technology that took the Empire centuries to develop. Intelligence Officer Han, who had remained silent until now, leaned forward. There's another factor we've overlooked. The human information networks are spreading news of their successes to other worlds under Imperial control. We're detecting increased resistance activities in 6 different sectors. Ta nodded grimly. The humans are becoming a symbol of resistance. If we don't end this conflict soon, we risk a wider rebellion. What do you propose, Admiral? Wei asked. A decisive strike, Tai answered. Intelligence indicates they've established their primary fleet base at Centauri Prime. If we can destroy their main force there, we might still turn the tide. The plan was set in motion. 3 battle groups would converge on Centauri Prime, overwhelming the human presence with the largest Imperial force assembled in a century. The Imperial Dreadnought *, Invincible *, pride of the fleet, and personal flagship of Grand Marshal Su, would lead the assault. As the Imperial Armada prepared for the attack, human intelligence networks were not idle. Through captured data cores and intercepted communications, Earth's unified command had pieced together the Empire's intentions. Commander Jin stood before the War Council in the underground facility beneath what had once been Geneva. Maps and tactical displays covered the walls, showing the movements of Imperial vessels. They're consolidating their forces for a major offensive, Jin explained to the assembled military leaders. Our forward bases have detected increased activity near Centauri Prime. Can we evacuate in time? Asked General Da, leader of the Asian Coalition forces. Jin shook her head. The shipyards aren't mobile, and we've invested too much in the orbital infrastructure. Besides, she added with a determined expression, this concentration of Imperial forces presents an opportunity we won't get again. You're suggesting we fight? Admiral Juan of the Atlantic Federation asked incredulously. Their numbers will overwhelm us. Not a conventional battle, Jin replied. Something they won't expect. Something human. 2 weeks later, the Imperial fleet emerged from hyperspace at Centauri Prime, weapons charged and fighters deployed. Grand Marshal Su stood on the bridge of the Invincible *, his imposing figure resplendent in ceremonial armor. The human fleet is in disarray, reported the tactical officer. They appear to be attempting to retreat. As expected, Su said with satisfaction, target their larger vessels first. Don't allow them to escape. The battle began according to Imperial doctrine. The massive dreadnought and its escorts launched a barrage of energy weapons, destroying several human ships immediately. The remaining human vessels scattered, seemingly panicked. Pursuit pattern Delta, Su ordered. Divide their forces and eliminate them systematically. As the Imperial fleet separated to chase the fleeing human ships, no one noticed the small, fast-moving objects approaching the Invincible * from multiple vectors. They appeared on sensors as debris, wreckage from destroyed human vessels. Inside one of these disguised boarding craft, Commander Jin checked her team's equipment one final time. 20 elite soldiers from Earth's Special Forces, each carrying modified weapons designed specifically to counter Imperial defenses. Remember your training, Jin told them as their craft attached to the dreadnought's hull. We have one chance to make this work. Using cutting tools reverse-engineered from Imperial technology, they'd breached the outer hull. Internal sensors detected the intrusion, but by then, Jin's team had already split into smaller groups, each with specific objectives. While Imperial security forces responded to the initial breach point, other teams moved through maintenance shafts toward critical systems. Jin led the primary strike team toward the bridge. They encountered resistance but used specialized weapons that disrupted Imperial energy shields, giving them a crucial advantage in the close quarters of the ship's corridors. On the bridge, Grand Marshal Su received increasingly alarming reports. Intruders have disabled engine control. Weapons systems are offline. Communication with the fleet has been cut. Before Su could organize an effective response, the bridge doors exploded inward. Jin and her team stormed through the smoke, their weapons targeting the command staff with precision. Within moments, the bridge was secure. Grand Marshal Su, Jin said, approaching the Imperial commander. Your ship is under our control. Order your fleet to stand down, or we will use the Invincible's self-destruct system. Su stared at the human with disbelief. You expect me to surrender the pride of the Imperial fleet? I expect you to make the logical choice, Jin replied calmly. Your ship is disabled. Your crew is being contained. And she added, gesturing to the view screen where the scattered Imperial fleet was now under attack from previously hidden human forces. Your carefully planned trap has become ours instead. The decisive moment came at Centauri Prime. The Imperial dreadnought Invincible pride of the fleet, fell to a human boarding party led by Commander Jin. The other Imperial vessels, having separated to pursue what they thought were fleeing human ships, found themselves isolated and vulnerable to concentrated attacks. Within hours, the battle had become the Empire's worst defeat in centuries. Over 30 Imperial warships destroyed or captured. Thousands of Imperial personnel taken prisoner. And most significantly, the Invincible itself, with all its technological secrets and strategic information, now in human hands. The captured ship's database revealed the Empire's defense networks to human intelligence, star charts, fleet deployments, communication protocols, and security codes, information that would allow human forces to strike anywhere in Imperial space with devastating precision. When news of the disaster reached Admiral Tai, he received it with strange calm. Part of him had expected this outcome. His studies of human history had shown him a pattern. When faced with overwhelming odds, humans became most dangerous. Meanwhile, rebellion sparked across the Empire as news spread of humans helping oppressed species. On worlds where Imperial control had been absolute for generations, subject populations began to resist. Many had contacted human forces directly, offering alliance and support. The empire that had stood unchallenged for 5,000 years now faced an existential threat, not from a rival power or advanced civilization, but from a species that only a year ago had been considered primitive and insignificant. In his private quarters, Admiral Ta closed the historical archives and opened a secure channel to Imperial High Command. The decision he was about to make would likely end his career, possibly his life, but he had come to believe it was the only way to save the Empire itself. I request permission to open peace negotiations with the humans, he stated without preamble. We can no longer win this war through conventional means. The stunned silence that followed told him everything about the difficult path ahead. Admiral Tai's proposal to open peace negotiations with humans was met with outrage at Imperial High Command. For 5,000 years, the Empire had never surrendered or sued for peace. The very suggestion was considered treason. You will be relieved of command, Grand Counselor Chol informed him coldly during the emergency session. Your battle groups will be reassigned to Grand Marshal Quan, who understands the proper way to deal with primitive rebellions. Ta stood firm before the council. With respect, that approach will fail. The humans now possess our technology, understand our tactics, and have formed alliances with other species across Imperial space. This is no longer a simple pacification. It is an existential threat to the Empire itself. His words fell on deaf ears. Within hours, Imperial security forces arrived to escort him to detention. His career was over, his reputation destroyed. But events were already in motion that would prove his assessment correct. Grand Marshal Quan launched what was intended to be the final offensive against humanity. 3 full battle fleets converged on Earth, prepared to end the resistance once and for all. The resulting Battle of Seoul became the largest space conflict in recorded history. Human forces, now equipped with fully integrated hybrid technology, met the Imperial Armada head-on. The battle raged for 7 days. When it ended, the Empire had lost 2/3 of its committed forces. Earth was damaged but unbroken, and human counterattacks pushed deep into Imperial territory. More devastating for the Empire was the wider rebellion that followed. 17 formerly subjugated species rose up against Imperial rule, many armed with technology provided by humans. Systems that had been under firm control for centuries declared independence. 6 months after Tay's arrest, the Emperor himself was forced to acknowledge reality. The Empire was losing on all fronts. Resources were strained to breaking point. For the first time in its long history, the Galactic Empire initiated peace talks. Tay was released from detention and, in a remarkable reversal, asked to lead the Imperial delegation. His understanding of humans, once considered a weakness, was now seen as essential to salvaging what remained of the Empire. The negotiations took place on neutral ground, a space station orbiting Jupiter. Representatives from Earth's United Coalition arrived alongside delegates from other rebelling worlds. The Imperial delegation, led by the now reinstated Admiral Tay, came prepared to make unprecedented concessions. The talks stretched over months. Humans proved to be tough but fair negotiators. They didn't seek vengeance or unconditional surrender, which surprised many in the Imperial delegation. Instead, they proposed a new galactic structure, one based on mutual cooperation rather than domination. They could demand our complete capitulation, Lieutenant Sung whispered to Tay during one session break. Their forces continue to advance even as we negotiate. That's not their way, Tay replied. At least, not when they believe a better alternative exists. They fight fiercely when threatened but prefer to build rather than destroy. As the framework of a new interstellar agreement took shape, Tay worked closely with human diplomat Mina, a former linguistics professor who had first deciphered Imperial language patterns during the initial contact. Your species continues to surprise me, Tay admitted during a late working session. You've gone from pre-FTL to challenging the greatest power in the galaxy in less than 2 years. Yet you don't seek to replace us as conquerors. Mina smiled. That was never our goal. Humans have learned through our own bloody history that empires based on force alone eventually fall. We're proposing something more sustainable. The Galactic Concordat, as the treaty came to be known, represented a complete restructuring of power. The empire would transition to a commonwealth, with member worlds given autonomy and representation. Earth and its allies would join as equal partners. Technology would be shared. Military forces would be integrated. When the final terms were presented to the Emperor, many expected rejection. The document essentially ended 5 millennia of absolute rule, but faced with the alternative, a prolonged war that intelligence suggested was unwinnable, the Emperor reluctantly agreed. 2 years after first contact, Tay stood in the Grand Council chamber, not as an imperial officer, but as a witness to the peace treaty. The vast hall, with its soaring crystalline dome and ancient ceremonial fittings, had never before hosted representatives of lesser species. Today, it was filled with diplomats from dozens of worlds, including a substantial human delegation. The Emperor sat on his elevated throne, his expression unreadable as the treaty was formally presented. Grand Councilors, military officers, and religious authorities filled the tiered seating around the central floor. The ceremony was being broadcast throughout Imperial space and to Earth. Human diplomat Mina addressed the assembly. We never wanted war. We only wanted respect and autonomy. Her voice carried clearly through the chamber's perfect acoustics. The conflict between our peoples has caused tremendous suffering on both sides. But from that suffering, we now have an opportunity to build something better than either of us could have created alone. She continued, outlining the vision of the new galactic partnership. As she spoke, Tay noticed many Imperial officials who had initially regarded humans with contempt now listening with grudging respect. The humans had proven themselves not just in battle but in their approach to peace. The Concordat before us today is not about winners and losers, Minna concluded. It is about recognizing the diversity of thought, of biology, of culture. These are strengths, not weaknesses. The galaxy is vast enough for all of us to thrive together. The Emperor rose slowly from his throne, a movement that silenced the chamber instantly. By tradition, the Emperor rarely spoke in public, allowing counselors to convey his will. That he would address this gathering personally underscored the historic nature of the moment. For 5,000 cycles, the Empire has brought order to the stars. He began, his voice deep and resonant. We believed our way was the only way. The humans have taught us otherwise. He paused, his gaze sweeping the chamber. Today marks not the end of our civilization, but its evolution. The galaxy changes. Those who cannot adapt perish. With these words, the Emperor, humbled by defeat, signed the Galactic Concordat, establishing a new interplanetary alliance with Earth as an equal partner. The stroke of his ceremonial stylus on the ancient paper document echoed with finality through the silent chamber. The signing set off celebrations across Earth and many former imperial worlds. For species that had lived under subjugation for centuries, the Concordat represented freedom and dignity. For humans, it validated their place among the stars. For the Empire, it offered a path forward that preserved their culture and influence, if not their absolute power. In the days that followed, the practical work of implementing the treaty began. Joint military commands were established. Trade routes were reopened. Cultural and scientific exchanges were initiated. Former enemies began the difficult process of becoming allies. As the ceremony concluded, Tai approached Mina as she gathered her materials from the signing table. You tried to warn us, he admitted. We should have listened. Mina smiled. It's not too late to start. That's the thing about humans. We're just as good at building peace as we are at winning wars. Ta nodded thoughtfully. I study your history now. For every destructive conflict, there are examples of remarkable cooperation and reconciliation. We contain multitudes, Minna replied. Just like your people, just like every sentient species. They walked together from the chamber, an imperial admiral and a human diplomat, symbols of the new order taking shape across the galaxy. In the years that followed, the transition wasn't always smooth. Centuries of imperial dominance left deep scars. Some imperial hardliners attempted to restore the old order. Some human factions pushed for greater concessions, but the fundamental structure of the Concordat held. Human technology and innovation, combined with imperial stability and experience, led to a renaissance of development across known space. Worlds that had been simple resource extraction colonies became thriving centers of culture and commerce. Species that had been deemed primitive contributed unique perspectives to galactic science and art. Admiral Tai eventually retired from military service to become an educator, teaching at the newly established Galactic Academy, where students from all species study together. His courses on the human-imperial war became the most popular in the curriculum, though he always emphasized the peace that followed rather than the conflict itself. Sometimes, during quiet evenings, he would reflect on how differently events might have unfolded if the Empire had approached Earth with respect rather than condescension. So much destruction might have been avoided. So many lives might have been saved. But perhaps, he thought, some lessons could only be learned the hard way. The Empire had needed to be humbled before it could grow. Humans had needed to be challenged before they could truly unite. And throughout the galaxy, beings looked to the stars with new understanding, not as conquests to be made, but as homes to distant cousins in the vast family of sentient life. Different in form and thought, but alike in their capacity for both destruction and creation. The Empire's first war with humans had indeed changed everything. They should have listened, but in the end, they finally did.